The question Christians probably ask me the most often is, if I'm an atheist, why do I make videos attacking God? In fact, the question comes up so often, I figured it would make more sense to put the answer in a video format. So here it is. Surprisingly, the Christians who ask me why I make these videos usually think I'm not really an atheist. They assume I was once a Christian, but that something really bad must have happened to me, and in my anger I lash out at God through my videos, trying to convince myself that he doesn't exist. So their first impulse is to try and comfort me by telling me that God still loves me. That's not only creepy, but their guess is not even slightly right. The real story is all about science. Despite the fact that most of us wouldn't be alive today without the scientific advancements in agriculture and medicine, despite the fact that our future as a species depends on continuing advancements in a wide range of scientific fields, despite the fact that little in biology and astronomy makes any sense except in the light of evolution and cosmology, and despite the fact that never once have we ever found any evidence whatsoever for the existence of the supernatural, much less the Judeo-Christian God, fundamentalist Christian creationists seek to undermine and discredit any science that conflicts with their religious dogma. The proof of that is right there in the statement of faith listed on the most popular creationist website, Answers in Genesis. By definition, no apparent, perceived, or claimed evidence in any field, including history and chronology, can be valid if it contradicts the scriptural record. In other words, no matter how solid the evidence for evolution or cosmology, creationists must dismiss it if it contradicts their interpretation of the Bible. Considering how important science is to our society, such a belief is anathema to our understanding of the universe, and even to our very survival. I would even go so far as to say that such creationists are essentially terrorists on a scale potentially far worse than anything Islam has ever thrown at us. After all, they work to remove evolution and cosmology from our children's education and replace them with debunked creationism and intelligent design. Their denigration of science has contributed to our nation's fall in student science literacy from first place to 29th place over the past few decades, and it has damaged our ability to innovate and prosper. And our government is filled with creationists who are setting policy, making laws, and controlling funding based on their beliefs rather than on sound science. Most politicians, even presidents, readily admit they rely on their religious faith to guide their decisions. They don't realize they are hurting this nation with a slow-motion suicide vest of ignorance and stupidity. I pursued my degree in evolution to arm myself against creationists. I keep up with developments in evolutionary science, and have spent decades defending science on various online forums. Unfortunately, while scientists know to cease arguing for hypotheses that have been proven wrong, creationists have no such standards. Far too often they continue using an argument even after it has been debunked. Many of them do so because they're dishonest and believe the ends justify the means, but many are simply uneducated enough in science and critical thinking to understand how to evaluate claims, so they just ignore the refutations of those claims. But then I discovered that the one thing biblical creationists cannot ignore is the Bible. It's the foundation of their belief system. It's the one source they do trust. So I studied the Bible, read numerous articles on Scripture, and even consulted with biblical scholars so I could understand where creationists are coming from. That's how I discovered their God condones and commits acts more repulsive and disgusting than anyone else in all of history. So I started arguing the morality of the Bible with fundamentalist Christians. As the saying goes, the best defense is a good offense, and by taking the battle to their own doorstep, I soon found arguments that were far more persuasive than simply defending science. Not only are the arguments simpler and easier to understand than most scientific arguments, but it's a lot harder for believers to ignore challenges to their most deeply held beliefs. Despite the slippery, often sleazy attempts by apologists to defend the atrocities committed by the God of the Bible, Most intelligent people who are walked through the arguments can grasp why the apologist defenses fail. My Case for an Evil God series has helped deconvert far more creationists than have any of my scientific arguments, simply because the evidence for God's immorality is easier for them to understand and harder for them to ignore. So that's why I make these videos. It's not about some silly reaction to a tragic life event, but about doing what I can to help protect the most important and effective system of understanding the universe we've ever developed: science. And if it takes going on the attack rather than simply defending, so be it. It's worth the fight.